What's happening right now? Jesus Christ, Bruce, she's your best friend's daughter. Barbara, you're smarter than this. Can't you control yourself? Bruce, she's your student. You've known her since she was like 14. Where are your ethics? Come on, Barbara. He's basically your boss. What are you doing? Bruce, she dated your son. That's disgusting. No, I'm leaving. I'm leaving.
Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
Okay, in all seriousness, we know this was the worst decision made in DC animated history, right? I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there that ship this, and okay, each to your own, but ask yourself, what does it do narratively, and how does it affect the characters? Well, there have been many hot takes on this topic, but I don't think there has been nearly enough whinging done about this, because if there was ever a creative decision outside of Game of Thrones that required a great deal of whinging, it's this one. And who is the overly sensitive fan who is going to be doing said whinging? Well, that fan is going to be me. Because when it comes to terribly written fanfiction, which is what this is, by the way, nobody does it better. That's not something I'm proud of, by the way. So before I do that, because let's face it, that's going to take up the majority of this review, I'm going to go through the parts of the movie that were actually the killing joke. Because most people have said that this portion of the movie is okay, or even good. I would like to vehemently disagree with that. Rage. Oh, you guys are so clever and subtle. Oh god, that is just brilliant. Absolutely wonderful symbolism there. Now, The Killing Joke has never been one of my favourite comics. Mostly because, and I've kind of changed my tune about this on recent years, I thought that any attempt to explain the Joker's madness or give him a backstory would ruin the character. I thought it was okay to hint at it, but there always had to be a certain amount of mystique surrounding the character for it to be effective. It's like the more you try to explain why Hannibal Lecter eats people, the less interesting and threatening he becomes. Now, I have softened my tone on that, and it's mostly, ironically enough, thanks to this movie. Because after I watched it, I was not only pissed about the prologue, but I remember finishing the entire movie and thinking, didn't this used to be so much deeper? So, I got out The Killing Joke and read through it again, cover to cover, and all I could see were these bright colours and incredible panel designs that told you so much about the characters within them. I would later learn that Alan Moore would write pages and pages of details for his artists about what the panel should look like, what should be in the room, and what that was supposed to signify. And Brian Boland just took those genius ideas and made them beautiful. Even the Arkham Asylum receptionist gets a little bit of characterization through the sign on her desk, and she doesn't even get any lines. I mean, this character should be little more than furniture in the context of the story, and I feel like I know her a little bit. The flashback portions are also incredible because this, to me, looks like a memory. The colours are dull and muted because memories are unreliable and there are loads of things about your memories that you don't recall in Technicolor. I remember the day my little brother was born very vividly. Me and my dad went to pick out a toy for him, and I remember going into the shop, picking out the toy. I remember going in to the hospital and the hospital bed being so high I could barely see over it, and my hand was up here because I was so small. I had to reach up in order to grab my dad's hand. But if you were to ask me to draw that scene, it would be pretty much in black, white and grey, except for the yellow beak the duck had and my brother's hair. The things that are highlighted in these flashbacks are the things that would stick out in a person's mind, like the bright red hood or the colour of his wife's hair. And to be honest, I never thought about looking at memory that way until I started appreciating this book. Now look at the movie. It's completely flat, it has no personality, and it's not just the colours either. I mean, look at this panel where the Joker is laughing, or this one where Batman bursts through the mirror. These images just leap off the panel. I don't know how it's possible for an animation to portray less movement than a page, but they somehow managed it. And then there's how they portrayed the Joker, and oh boy, they didn't screw him up nearly as bad as they did Barbara, but they did screw him up pretty badly. I would never say that Mark Hamill was bad, because I don't think it's actually possible for him to give a bad Joker performance. But it's certainly not one of his best.
It doesn't have to be good to be a classic.
Though most of the blame for that I don't lay on him, because these writers seem to have completely misunderstood what the Joker was trying to do in this story. Look at his face in this panel. Look at what he's saying. This to me seems to be an occasion where the Joker was trying to be sincere for once. He genuinely believes that what he's saying is right and wants someone to understand and validate him. Again, that is what makes The Killing Joke so brilliant. Like I said, I've always been skeptical of Joker origin stories because I've always thought this is a less is more kind of character. But much like the Joker movie would do decades later, this comic managed to create a situation where it could make him relatable without taking away from the mystique of the character. And of course, you can always choose to believe that what you are seeing didn't really happen and is just another element of his madness. Now, the Joker's relationship with Batman has always been very important to him because being chased by this man is basically what gives his life purpose. So, trying to explain to Batman why he is the way he is and trying to tell him, I'm no different from everyone else, if what happened to me happened to someone else, they would become as insane as I am, is a genuine attempt to reach out and make a human connection. Now, I'm not saying, oh, poor Joker, no, he crippled Barbara and he still feels no remorse for any of the pain he causes, but, and this is the sad and scary truth, he is human. And the worst of the worst in both real life and fiction are human. And everyone wants to be understood.
It's nice when someone sees us, Hannibal.
Here, the Joker is trying to make his adversaries understand that the world is mad, and the only way to deal with it is by going mad yourself, and the only thing separating the sane from the insane is a series of shitty things happening to you. And he is so desperate for someone to validate this because he's beginning to doubt it himself, and if he does accept that he's wrong, then he might have to begin to come to terms with the fact that he is the problem. In the movie, he says it like this.
Why can't you see the funny side? Why aren't you laughing?
So this just comes across like he's trying to tell one of his usual jokes and is getting frustrated when the joke isn't going his way. Mark Hamill said when he retired this character that he would only come back if it was for the Killing Joke, and I totally get why. The iconic voice of the Joker wants to sink his teeth into the iconic Joker story. So I think he's a little bit off his game here because there is nothing for him to sink his teeth into. And that is such a shame because with his range, this could have been his greatest Joker performance ever. As it stands, the script may tell the Joker's supposed backstory, but doesn't really delve into the character beyond that. So, on to what is arguably the worst portrayal of a character in comic book history, and considering some of the batshit, no pun intended, portrayals of characters we've had over the years, that is certainly saying something. Now, in film and television, there are so many people involved in one project that it's very hard to pinpoint whose decision was whose. Was it a writer's decision, a studio mandate, a producer's request, or did the directing and editing veer away from what the script was originally trying to portray? So I just want to make it clear that I am making a lot of assumptions here based on what little information I have, and I will try to be as gentle as possible because I really do not know what was going on in the heads of these creators at the time. That being said, whose decision was this? I'm going to go with Bruce Timm, considering what he said in panels, interviews, and his portrayal of Batman and Batgirl in Batman the Animated Series and the connecting movies.
Are you all right?
Yes, thanks to you.
Barbara! Hey, Babs!
What is it, Dick?
Yeah, Dick, I was in the middle of a fantasy where I was about to fuck your adoptive father. Jeez, I am this close to friend-zoning you right now. You know, I have a theory that the reason Dick is so insufferable in Batman the Animated Series is because Bruce Timm was salty that he was Barbara's main love interest, so he went out of his way to make him as whiny and childish as possible. And Dick does whine, don't get me wrong, I mean, boy does he have his whiny moments, but that's basically all he does in this show, which is one of the reasons I'm not as fond of it as most people are. Well, that and... ew. So, like I said, I'm putting the blame on Tim because he seems to have been obsessed with shipping these two for a really long time. It's there in Batman the Animated Series, it's explicit in Batman Beyond, and in this...
But spring break will be coming up soon, and I'll be back in Gotham for 2 whole weeks. Won't that be nice?
Seriously, what version of Batgirl talks like that? Just put on a cookie accent and that's more likely to be something Harley Quinn would say.
But spring break will be coming up soon, and I'll be back in Gotham for 2 whole weeks. Won't that be nice?
And then she walks out onto her balcony and pouts at him for daring to be in the presence of another bat-themed female.
I just saw the news, and I was wondering if you'd gotten a new partner. Someone a little older? 'Cause if you had, I'd be really upset. 'Cause I thought you and I were, you know.
This is causing the cringes.
Now, Tim has tried to justify his shipping of these two on multiple occasions, and, well, he's not very good at it. In an interview with Vulture, he was asked about the prologue, and this was his response. It's really important to us to show that both of these characters are making some pretty big mistakes. I mean, his parental skills aren't that great. Maybe never having any kids of his own, he doesn't realise if you tell a kid to do something, they're going to want to do it even more, and then she makes some mistakes, and then he kind of overreacts to her mistakes, and then she overreacts to his overreaction, so it's very human. It's a very understandable story. It's tricky because it's messy, because relationships are sometimes messy. So you have Batman treating Batgirl like a child right before and after he has sex with her. I don't know how you could have made this worse, but you just did. I mean, Tim, did you actually hear the words that came out of your mouth right then? And seriously, Batman never had any kids? Are you serious? Yes, his relationships with his Robins are much more complicated than just straight up parental, but he took Dick in when he was around the age of 8 or 10. I'll grant you, yes, his parental skills often suck, but he has raised children. Unconventionally, yes, but in every way that truly matters, he has been a father. You don't remember that? Screenwriter Brian Azzarello was no better, as he was confronted by a journalist at San Diego Comic-Con about how the attempts to make the story more about Barbara only succeeded in making it more about the men in her life. He responded by saying that she controls the men in her life, and a fan somewhere in the auditorium shouted, "She is strong by using sex?" To which he responded by calling the fan a pussy and storming off stage. He then had the gall to claim that Barbara wasn't pining after Bruce after her spending most of her time staring forlornly at happy couples, complaining to her sassy gay best friend about a guy she's seeing, and attacking a guy who was breaking up with his girlfriend. That's what you wrote, Brian! And if I were a writer trying to construct a story about a competent female superhero in order to make her more sympathetic right before she receives a life-altering injury, and I started to focus on her sex life, I would hope that that would be the moment someone would slap my hands away from the keyboard. Why don't either of you seem to know what it is you actually wrote? These two men then tried to gain points back by claiming that the whole debacle was Batman's fault, and no. Batman was totally right to kick Barbara off this case. She's incompetent, she's hot-headed, she likes it when the villains give her attention, she lets her emotions get the better of her, and it comes across like she's only doing this for fun and to get Batman to notice her.
There was a time when capes and cowls and fighting crime really was exciting.
It's still a game for you. It's still a thrill.
I'm in this because of you! I did what you wanted!
In the comics, she wasn't brought into the life of crime fighting the same way the Robins were. She was inspired by Batman to go out and do something about the crime in Gotham. She's highly intelligent and capable, and it's so embarrassing and disheartening that writers from the 60s managed to make her a more inspiring feminist icon than writers working half a century later.
I thought we were partners.
We are, but we're not equals. Not even close.
They focus on nothing but her sex life, they make her reasons for crime fighting selfish and abysmal, they portray her as an angry, pining, jilted lover and an emotional wreck who can't keep her emotions in check enough to do her job properly. So no, when you look at the character you actually wrote, Batman is totally right to kick her off the case. And then there's that painful scene where after she has sex with a guy she essentially works with, she whines down the phone at him for not returning her calls. Does this look familiar, Bruce Timm?
It was just sex, for God's sake. It doesn't have to mean anything. It's not like we have to care. I don't care. You don't care. We just go back as it was. That's all.
Not to mention all the gratuitous shots of her ass and the totally necessary scenes of her in her underwear and stretching in gym clothes. God, this character is so strong and capable. Can you just see how much character they put into her? I mean, look at that character. Check out that character. Killing Joke was already controversial for its treatment of Barbara, but it was possible to ignore those elements and enjoy the story for what it was. You managed to take something that was problematic and make it embarrassingly misogynistic. And every time you try to justify it, it just makes it worse. I'm not even going to talk about Bruce Timm's claim that them having a sexual relationship makes it more heartbreaking for Batman when she gets injured, because everything about that sentence is so rage-inducing that I actually turned red while I was typing it. I will only ask you one question. What's more interesting? A girl he's known for a long time and watched grow into a woman, someone he inspired, someone who he taught,
I'll be practicing that.
someone who fights beside him not because she wants to bang him, but because she looks up to him and respects what he does, or the love interest. That's right. They relegate her to the love interest. And no, guys, that doesn't make it better, it makes it worse. Okay, anything about the prologue I liked? Maybe I'm alone in this, but I kinda like Paris France. He's cool and collected and not just a young hothead who wants to make a name for himself on the mob scene without anything to back it up. He is intelligent and wants to bring more cybercrime into the industry. I also don't really mind the fact that he constantly hits on Batgirl because, to me, this is kinda realistic. Because I've actually known guys like this who are otherwise very cool-headed and competent individuals, but have such a warped view of women that when they come across one they find attractive, they feel some kind of sense of entitlement over them or see them as a challenge or a conquest. If you are going to focus on a female superhero's sexuality, then it is not actually a bad idea to create a story that delves into how being a woman might affect you if you were living that lifestyle. He could have been a fun and relevant villain in a Batgirl story, but when you have the villain objectify the female superhero only for the artists to then objectify her themselves, and then have her turn around and sleep with someone who is her teacher, her partner, her father's best friend, and her ex-boyfriend's father before throwing tantrums and crying about it, just makes her look like she can't handle the pressure of being a superhero. So, good villain for what he is, but in the Killing Joke prologue, what he is just serves to make the story worse. Now, I am a big believer in death of the author. I believe that when an artist puts something out into the world, it no longer belongs to them. Of course, they should still be entitled to royalties and other forms of payment because this art did come from their labour. But if a chef makes delicious food, they shouldn't be entitled to tell you how to eat it. If an automobile manufacturer makes a car, they are not the ones to tell you how to drive it. Similarly, when an artist writes something, they should not be allowed to tell you how to interpret it. And trying is a worthless endeavour because you can't police people's minds. So I don't think the author's intent is irrelevant, because there is an interesting point of view to be had over seeing a piece of art through the artist's eyes. It can give you a really empathetic point of view that you wouldn't otherwise have had if you hadn't put yourself in the artist's position and tried to understand what was going through their mind when they made it. So when it comes to analysing the Killing Joke and how gratuitous and in ill taste it was to fridge Batgirl to make the author's point and give the male characters around her something to get angry over, I don't think Alan Moore's intent is really all that important. And I don't think there has ever been a greater argument for death of the author outside of E.L. James for this 28-minute character assassination. And for those of you who still disagree with me, if these creators' intent was to make Batgirl a strong yet flawed female superhero that the audience would feel sympathy for after something terrible happened to her, then I guess this is what female empowerment looks like. Fight crime for kicks, sleep with someone it's wholly inappropriate for you to sleep with, whine when that guy doesn't call you back, mope, throw temper tantrums, lose your cool on the job, and quit. Yeah, author's intent is really important. And the reason I hate this so much is because it weakens both the characters. Now, I know it's not fair to judge an artist by their art because, like I said before, you never really know what was going on in the mind of a creator when they made something. So this is not an accusation towards Bruce Timm, Brian Azzarello, or anyone else who was involved in this project. But seriously, this is how a middle-aged man from the 80s would write a female superhero.
How many birds does it take to change a light bulb? 2. One to run around screaming, "What do I do?" and one to shag the electrician.
Listen, I get it. Writing is hard, editing is hard, drawing is hard, and if DC put a famous comic down in front of any of us and asked us to make an animated adaptation, we probably wouldn't make solid gold either. But here's the thing. This is irrelevant. If a chef makes you a crappy meal, they shouldn't turn around and say, well, it's no better than how you would have cooked it. If an automobile manufacturer makes you a crappy car, they shouldn't be allowed to turn around and say, well, why don't you make a better car yourself? When you get a crappy product that the creators put poor thought into, you are entitled to complain. And this, and I don't say this lightly, is one of the worst comic book adaptations I have ever seen. There are others that from a technical standpoint are objectively worse, but at least they put some thought into their audience, their characters, and their story, and sometimes the pieces just don't fall together. Like I said, it's hard to know whose decision gave way to which result. But this one doesn't feel like a mistake to me. This looks to be how the creators of this piece of art view these characters. And to me, that is just embarrassing, stupid, wildly misguided, and just plain sad. There is one thing I have to thank this movie for, and that is giving me a serious appreciation of the comic book. Because like I said, The Killing Joke was never really one of my favourites. I never had bad feelings about it, I just didn't really find it all that interesting, and I originally thought the one bad day philosophy was a bad idea. Even within the context of the universe, the Joker didn't have one bad day that turned him insane. It's years of being ground down until that one bad straw breaks the camel's back, which is done so well in Joker 2019. And it seems to conflate being insane with being villainous, which is just, no. But the more I think about The Killing Joke, the more I see it as an incredibly important and definitive Batman story. It reinforces the idea that Batman's no-killing rule and advocacy for the justice system is what makes him a unique superhero.
This man should be tried.
It, unintentionally, gave us arguably the most famous and best disabled character in comic book history, and added depth to the Joker without taking away the fear and mystique surrounding him. Even if you don't agree with it, you can see the influence it has had on the Batman mythology for decades at this point.
You know what separates the freaks from the normals? Just one rotten day. Ever had a really rotten day, Batman?
This comic is truly, despite its problems, a masterwork. And it is so sad that these men, who are brilliant creators in their own right, have boiled it down to a flat, lifeless pillar used to prop up their fan fiction. Well, I know this was one of the more emotional ones, and I don't really know why that is the case, because I've never been particularly attached to Batgirl. I think she's okay, it's just never really been one of the characters I've particularly gravitated towards, but her portrayals have always been amazing, and she's always been a inspirational character in so many ways to so many different people, and to see her brought down to this, despite not having a great love of the character, did kind of piss me off, and I don't usually get like that. Like I said, if you don't like a portrayal, there's really no need to get angry about it, because it just doesn't work for you. But this, I don't think, works for anyone other than the creators. And as a woman, I don't want to say take offense to it, because I know it wasn't, aimed at saying, oh, women act this way, and they're so emotional, and oh, they can't handle being superheroes. I know it wasn't meant that way, but that is the way it came across. This is basically a rom-com with bat fetish. Really, that's all this is. And not a particularly good rom-com either. I think I'm doing rom-coms a serious disservice. And also there's no comedy in it either, which, considering this is a Joker story, is also very disappointing. Anyway, I could just go off the cuff about how bad this is again and again, but you've already heard my more structured feelings about it, so I'm going to stop there, and I'm just going to ask you to like and subscribe, and consider visiting my Patreon, and consider becoming a Nightwing, because he is the top patron, and he's the top comic book character. Yes, he just is. And thank you once again, everyone, for joining me. Please tell me what you think about The Killing Joke. Did you find some redeemable features about it? what do you think about the portion that is not the prologue? Do you think they did the killing joke justice in that portion anyway? Whatever you want to say, leave the comments below and join me in the next one. Bye!